Hey everyone, thank you for tuning in to the Social Justice Politicast. Today you have Skylar, and with me I am joined today by Moiz Mir, who is kind of an all-around, one of the hardest working advocates in Sacramento, I would say. But yeah, Moiz, thank you so much for being here with us. I appreciate you.
Happy to be here.
I'm going to surrender it to Moiz in just a second, but before I do that, I want to give you just a quick rundown on what happened last week at City Council. There were no county meetings last week. Um, and it's not a whole ton happened. There was, you'll remember there was the appointed officers, the Unit 24 item, that was passed with minor amendments. At budget and audit, they went through some of the items that are about to come before council, at 5 p.m. tomorrow. Where they're going to, like, as you know, we have a budget gap of about $66 million. So staff is in the middle of trying to present council with several different options of how to change revenue streams around, throw money around to try and get us out of that. So that was budgeted on it last week. That will also be the 5 p.m. meeting tomorrow. There is the Community Police Review Commission is also meeting actually this evening at 5:30. It's just the same meeting that they were going to do last time, but they had to postpone because of lack of quorum. So they'll be setting their work plan for the year, selecting or electing their chair and vice chair and that kind of thing. So that might be a good one to tune into. There is also, so there's at the city tomorrow, there's law and legislation in the morning. I'm going to let Moise talk about that. But then there is a 2 p.m. The discussion item there is they are officially appointing the city attorney. If you want to kind of read a little bit more about like kind of what that could mean and sort of some of the history, check out the agenda tracker that I'm linking in the show notes here. And then, like I said, the 5 p.m. meeting will just be kind of budget updates, staff suggestions, and yeah, so that is kind of what you can expect for this evening at the Police Review Commission, and then tomorrow at City Council. The county is there's nothing really on the county agenda that stuck out to me as super notable, so we're just gonna go ahead and follow up with that next week. But I would not expect that to be super eventful. What I would expect to be super eventful is this law and legislation meeting that is happening tomorrow morning. So, Moise, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and kind of give us the rundown on what's happening and some background for folks.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks to SJPC for uplifting this call to action for tomorrow's meeting at the city's Law and Legislation Committee at 9:30 a.m. The main thing that Asian American Liberation Network is doing right now is trying to turn out written and e-public comments on particularly item number 3 on tomorrow's agenda. And so item number 3 on tomorrow's agenda is a proposal by council members Eriqueta, Karina Talamantes, and Mai Vang on prohibiting the use of city facilities and city property for ICE, DHS, and more broadly, immigration-related enforcement activities. The proposal that we're seeing on tomorrow's agenda is on tomorrow's agenda because of the massive record-breaking turnout on the January 27th City Council meeting. And at that meeting, it was an update to the city's immigration policy platform. We turned out successfully. It was about 300 people in person the day of the meeting at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. The city council chambers were full. We had people kind of out the door in the line waiting. So people had to make comment, step out of the city council chambers to make room for more people to make public comment. That went on for 4.5 hours. In addition to a record-breaking like 670-ish written e-comments online. Um, and I think all of that kind of really just demonstrates the level of outrage, the level of community pressure that like the city of Sacramento really needs to step up, right? To say no to ICE, to stop ICE from acting on our streets, and also to hold the Sacramento Police Department accountable in the way that they have been, unfortunately, intimidating protesters, citing protesters, in ways that are concerning and seem to be collaboration with ICE, right? That they're clearing the path for ICE to be able to operate on city streets in a way that violates the 1985, the 2017, and as of most recently, the 2026 resolution that just passed on January 27th, which also specifically um, enshrines the John Moss Federal Building as a space where people are allowed to practice their First Amendment rights to protest and free speech, right? Unfortunately, since that January 27th meeting, we've seen continued escalations from the Sacramento Police Department, even more like detaining of protesters who are just truly there practicing their rights, trying to like right protest ICE activity locally. Um, and so this tomorrow, February 10th, item number 3 proposal is one piece in kind of follow-up to that January 27th um, symbolic resolution that the city passed. They passed it overwhelmingly with the amount of like outpouring of public support that it would be impossible to vote no against that. But unfortunately, what passed on January 27th is truly just a symbolic resolution. It doesn't have any like accountability pieces that we were asking for. And even then, that like January 27th resolution is in response to a community accountability letter that came out on November 18th. Community has been consistently engaging with council members, with the mayor's office, asking for these pieces of tangible policy. We saw that January 27th overwhelming passing of that resolution. And now we're seeing this February 10th tomorrow. Item number 3 is kind of a first piece, specifically prohibiting the use of city facilities and property. Um, we're actually asking that they expand that definition because right now they're talking about parking lots, they're talking about staging areas, but we actually know that the city has resources um, that ICE can take advantage of. And so we want to dismantle any access that ICE and federal immigration enforcement has on any type of city resources, not just physical property and parking lots, but also the data infrastructure, the surveillance infrastructure, right? There are contractors like ShotSpotter. There are license plate reader like cameras all across the city. And that is what we know nationally, a network of surveillance that ICE can tap into. And so cities like Los Angeles have already passed in their sanctuary policies things like a data sanctuary proponent or component of their sanctuary platform that requires contractors who contract with the city, so private companies who like run these cameras, these systems, these data systems, these surveillance systems, to certify to the city on an annual basis that none of that data that's being collected on behalf of and paid for by the city can be shared with federal immigration enforcement. And so expanding that definition to not just physical property, but all types of city resources, including that data network piece, and also asking very specifically to close the loophole of joint task forces. And so when joint task forces operate, that is a collaboration between multiple levels of government and law enforcement agencies. So it could be the FBI, it could be the CIA, it could be like county sheriff, local police, and that's the city of Sacramento's police department, right? All in the same room, coordinating on some type of enforcement action. If that type of enforcement action is related to immigration, that would violate city resources, staff time of the Sacramento Police Department, right? And so we want to make sure that joint task forces that involve immigration are something that the Sacramento Police Department, the city of Sacramento and its resources are not complicit in or cooperating with. And so those are our very two specific asks. We also want to make sure that this piece that passes tomorrow, because we're expecting it to pass, I don't imagine council members would be like, yeah, after what happened on January 27th, that overwhelming record-breaking amount of public outpouring of support for this type of policy that they would vote against this. But what's dangerous is if we allow city council members without continued sustained pressure to just say like, well, here's a piece of policy, we passed it. That's a win, right? It's done. It's like, well, what does that actually entail? What's actually in the like staff report, right? If you read the staff report, and not that everyone has to read the staff report, but that's why we're making these specific asks of make it tangible and also make it time bound and accountable. We want a clear timeline and a deadline. Um, and right now, those pieces aren't in this. And so we're asking specifically for that. Folks who are tuning in, we want, those written comments. We also want direct emails to council members. So council members on the committee, all of that is kind of broken up in the toolkit, like how to do that, who your council member is in the first place, who's on that committee. Um, we're expecting this to go to committee tomorrow, pass, and be advanced to the full city council, at which point there will be like follow-up meetings. But we really want this sustained pressure, not just to pass something, but to pass something substantive that changes the way the city operates in a way that actually makes our communities safe. Um,
So,
this is,
Moise, real
yeah,
quick question for you. So, just just so everybody knows, so the point of the Law and Ledge Committee
Yeah.
is that this is kind of where, when there's a new ordinance being proposed, it comes to this group first, and then this group will kind of kick it around with just four council members, and then they'll decide whether or not they want to push it to the full council for a vote to actually be solidified, or if they kind of want to send it back to be retooled and then
Yes.
brought back to Law and Ledge.
Yeah.
So to like, are we do we want this to move to the full council, or do we want them to take it back and strengthen it and then bring it back to Law and Ledge? Like, what would the preference be there
Yeah.
for the way things go tomorrow?
Yeah, real good question on the procedure of this. There are a couple of different like options of how this can go down tomorrow. I think our ideal option is on the dais during the committee member discussion, they hear our comments, they hear our feedback, and say, okay, let's revise this and incorporate these pieces into it and send that to the full council. Right now, as it's written, the motion is, or one of the potential motions is that the council members on this committee at Law and Legislation direct the city manager to craft this a bit more and bring that full thing to the city council. And so we want council members tomorrow on that committee to give direction to the city manager to craft it, incorporating those revisions that we're suggesting. Um, and hopefully that comes to the full council with these kind of broader components of expanding that definition of city resources and city property.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because we want, no, for one, obviously, we want these things to be enacted in the way that AALN is recommending, but we also need it to happen like fast. Like, it can't be a thing that they, quote unquote, research for several months and blah
Yeah,
blah blah, while people are just being having their constitutional rights violated outside the John Moss building like every day.
exactly.
So can real quick, I really appreciate that rundown. That's
Mhm.
super helpful info and super helpful
Yeah.
background. But just kind of as a Cliff Notes thing, for the listeners, can
Yes.
you just do like a just kind of a brief rundown of what is currently and is in the item that's being discussed tomorrow, and then exactly what are the additions that are being requested?
Yeah. So currently it's written to prohibit the use of city facilities and city property. That's things like parking lots. We want to expand that to also all of the surveillance tech within the city of Sacramento operating for the city. And we also want to expand that to City of Sacramento Police Department's time, those staff hours, and prohibit that use in joint task forces where there's immigration enforcement involved.
Okay. Great. Well, Moiz, thank you so much. And so in the show notes here, the Asian American Liberation Network has put together this great toolkit that's got instructions on how you can participate if you can be there in person, instructions on how to provide written comment, suggestions on kind of bullet points for you to hit if this is something that means a lot to you, but you're not 100% sure the details. There's some info in there to help you get oriented. And yeah, I mean, everything you need is really in that toolkit. So we'll definitely throw a link into that, as well as just kind of a way for you to get in touch with the work that ALN is doing in general. Um, yeah, I mean, I think that pretty much covers it. I think it's going to be a big day tomorrow, starting at 9:30. And I mean, another thing to note is that if the last meeting is any indicator, you might want to show up about a half an hour early, or there you might have to wait outside if there's too many folks who want to comment. So we will see. I mean, hopefully we get that turnout because I agree, Moise. I think it was super effective last time. And it is like, I mean, if you want things to get done, like you got to show up and yell at these guys, you know?
One
So,
thing, one thing I will say just on that note, these meetings are inaccessible, right? January 27th was a 2 p.m. Tuesday center of the workday city council meeting, and we still had that like 300 people turnout. Tomorrow's meeting is a 9:30 a.m. Tuesday meeting, even harder to get to. It's also a committee meeting. It's a law and legislation committee meeting. It's not the full city council meeting. And so if you look in the toolkit, you'll notice we like have like three different actions. That's e-comment, direct email your council members, and then the third one is like if you can show up in person, that's welcome. We're not like super pushing that for this meeting tomorrow. I think there's also the conversation, right, of like we don't want to burn people out. We want to like sustain this long term. And so if you can come tomorrow, great. There's also going to be follow-up because there's this specific item on the February 10th Law and Legislation Committee agenda. On March 3rd, we have another entirely different follow-up policy on birthright citizenship and how that comes to the Racial Equity Committee. And then again, that will also come to the full city council, hopefully. And so we're going to have lots of city council meetings coming up with these items and kind of this broader like patchwork of pieces of immigration policy that make up this broader platform. So stay engaged. If you can come tomorrow, great. If you can't, write in and just stay tuned for more action.
Awesome. Well, Moise, thank you so much again for joining us. This was huge, and thank you for just all the work that you do out there, man. I have to imagine that 9 out of 10 people who are watching this right now have seen you out there doing something at one point or another. So, thank you for being fastidious about that.
Of course, thanks to SJPC for being a microphone.
All right, y'all. Well, we will see you this next week, and yeah, stay safe out there, and we'll see you soon.
See you.